Well, hello everybody. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I am Emily from Emily's Art Journey, and I'm so happy you're here today. This is part 2 of the Hydrangea painting. We drew it the last video, and we're gonna paint it today. This is the photo that I took of my neighbor's hydrangea, but I thought it was absolutely gorgeous, so I thought we could just throw it in even though it's not technically my plant. And I wanted to show how something that looks super complicated can also be a little bit simplified, so I think this is going to be fun. The colors I'm going to use are apple blossom, soft lilac, periwinkle, sunset, yellow green, true green, and I'm going to be using burnt sienna. I just don't have it out yet. And I will link all these supplies in the description box, including what brands they are and all that kind of stuff. I have my little pipette that I always use to put water in my paints. I have my number 6 round Princeton brush. I have my number 3 Princeton brush. I have a liner brush, and then I might be using my number 10 round brush also from Princeton. So I'm going to tackle this by kind of each individual little grouping of petals, and I'm going to kind of use a few different colors in each one, or kind of make a variety just to kind of make it kind of exciting and everything. You can do that or don't do that. It's entirely up to you. So let's see. Oh, this is also 100% cotton paper. I will list the brand in the description box as well. It's pretty good. It has a little bit of a tooth. It's not as good as maybe my favorite Arches paper, but I actually like it quite a bit. So I thought it would be fun to use this little book for this series. So let's just jump right in. All right, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here. I do have water also off to the side, so. All right. I'm gonna actually start with my 3-inch round, or number 3 round, I should say. And if you look at this, some of them are a lot lighter. A lot of them are a lot lighter on the tips, and then they get a little bit darker. So I think we're gonna kind of tackle it that way. I am going to just start right here. Just kind of jump in. I'm actually going to test a couple of different ways to do it. I'll zoom in just a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to test it by getting it wet first. I did lighten my lines a little bit. I would have had them be a lot lighter if I was just doing this on my own, but I really like you guys to be able to see where I'm working, so I kept the pencil lines a little bit darker. So I'm going to get that wet. I'm going to dry off my brush because I already have water in my paint. And we'll start with this apple blossom color. And I'm going to put some here at the top. I'm going to kind of wipe my brush off. I actually could have done that the opposite way. Yeah. Started at the center where it's more concentrated, and then I wiped my brush off, and then you can kind of start bringing some of that color kind of towards the tip there. We can also paint it where we just go in just straight with the paint and don't get it wet first, and then I'll kind of rinse it out, dab off a little bit of water, but you want a little bit of water, and then you just start pulling that color towards the tip of it. And then if you want, we can take a little bit of this soft lilac and just put like a little touch of that in there. Again, you don't have to. You can start with just one color. I think I kind of like the where we just go in with it kind of straight in with the paint. Okay, rinsed it out, have just a little bit of water on it. And then I'm going to pull that to the tip so that it's less concentrated by the time I get to the tip. And do that again. We're not outlining the petal first. I want to go in one direction. I'm just kind of pulling that paint. If you want to add a little bit more, you can, since it's wet already, you can go in and just kind of, just touching it with the tip of my brush. And then that'll diffuse naturally, which is really nice. And if it's already dry a little bit, then you can just go in with a little bit of water and pull that down. Okay, I think I'm just going to start kind of bouncing around a little bit so I don't do any right next to each other where they're like overlapping or anything. So we'll go up here, rinse my brush, and this one is kind of curled in, so I will make this whole part a little bit darker. Put that one off to the side, and then I'm going to bring in the number 3 with a little bit of water, and I'm still going to just go ahead and drag that out, but I want that to be lighter, and then later on I can go in and put actually a little bit of a darker shadow there. And I just changed colors. I'm actually going to put a little bit of that soft lilac. I'm just going to go in with some water. And I just kind of wipe my brush off as it gets loaded with paint if I want to keep it getting lighter and lighter. And I'm going to drop just a little bit of that pink in the tip of my brush. And I think I'll add a little bit of that soft lilac over here too. And this one I can actually make just a little bit darker because it is behind this one here. Doesn't need to be that dark, and I can kind of take some out of the center even. And this is like our first layer potentially. We can always go back in and deepen anything up that we want to. Okay, so this one here is curved right here. So I'm going to make this one pink again. Actually, I'll start here and then drag it up there. So it'll be darker there. And then I got my brush wet. And then I'm just going to actually drag that paint also up there. This petal's a little bit dry now. It dries fairly quickly. I also actually have a little bit of a fan on here, so I'll drop a little bit more there because it would be darker. If you get too much, you can kind of have it just a very lightly damp brush and then just pick some up. Your brush can be like a little sponge. I always have a paper towel in my hand so I can use it as I need it. Drop in a little bit of that purple there, or lilac I should say. I think hydrangeas are so pretty. Does anybody have hydrangeas in their yard? I had a hydrangea I got as a gift. I think I said this in the last video. It was so pretty and it didn't make it. I planted a flower garden last year in an area of my yard where the grass and the curb are ridiculous. It's actually on the curb, or on like the corner of my yard. because I got tired of mowing it because it was ridiculous. And I did it, I planted them for my mom for Mother's Day. It turned out really pretty. So some of the flowers that we're going to paint are actually from that area of the yard. I love it when springtime comes and all the flowers start popping. I actually recorded a video in the spring of a daffodil. So if you want to check that out, I'll have that linked at the end of this video. It was a fun one. And that one's, it's fairly long, but it's start to finish. It's a full tutorial, so let's put some more of that blue in there. This one I'm making a little bit darker because it's a little behind some of the other petals, so. Kind of make it darker. And then I do have this sunset color. It's fairly dark, but we could pop that in there too, just to add a little bit of brightness. Kind of rinse my brush out a little bit. A little bit more. Just to soften that up. Mixed a little bit of the sunset and apple blossom just to create a little bit of a darker shade, but not as dark as just the sunset by itself. To kind of pop that in a few places as well. That's what this is here. So at any point, if I think that I got too much paint, is when I just kind of rinse my brush off and then just pick some of that paint up. And if I go and I'm like, oh, that's so much, then I just rinse my brush off as well. And then I just make sure I'm just kind of spreading around what's already on the paper. Like that's a lot of that color, so I rinsed my brush out. I just want to make this one a little darker. Kind of push that into that lilac color. Okay. Again, I'm finding my way by looking at the centers right now. I'm just kind of doing the fuller flower little groupings right now. Always kind of dabbing my brush off after I put it in the water because I don't want it dripping wet. I just want it damp. And then I will also kind of wipe off the paint. If it's like a really bold color, I'll just kind of touch the tip of a paper towel just to make sure it's not super crazy. Just darkening that under there. That way it gives the illusion that there's a shadow. Makes it a little more 3D. I'm just working kind of methodically around, like I said, so that I'm kind of skipping some so that no petals really just run into each other. The paint doesn't run. Pink is obviously the main color that I'm using, this apple blossom color. But I thought it would be fun to add those other colors just for some interest and make it not look so flat. Not that it would necessarily look flat, but it just, I think it makes it more interesting when we can kind of play and try different things. Alright, so this petal's behind, so I'm going to actually add a little bit of that mixture of the apple blossom and the sunset, because that one would be a lot more in shadow. But I'm still going to add just a little bit more to that center, I think. There we go. This one is also behind. I'm going to start with that regular apple blossom first. And then I'm going to go in with that mixture. I'd love to know in the comments if you're painting along or if you're painting something else. If you're painting this, I'd love to know what your thoughts are, if you find it to be easy or if you think it's kind of hard. If you have any questions, please let me know. I always check the comments. Also love to know what colors you're using, if you're using a different color palette. I thought the pastels would be nice. I don't use the pastel palette all that often because I know that it is kind of light, but I thought it would lend itself really nicely to this project, this painting. You can also kind of put some little lines in there if you want to, some just little light lines. And there are little lines in the petals, but I'm trying to keep this fairly simple, but I might throw a few of those in just every once in a while. Not simple, but simplified. I'm trying to be real careful when I get up against another petal, just to make sure that they're separate. Put a little dab of purple in that one. If it does start to dry, you can have a damp brush and just, it's called scrubbing, when you just kind of move the brush back and forth to be able to kind of reactivate the paint. Tip for you is the way you hold your brush matters. If you want to stay in the lines, you don't want to hold your brush like this because you're probably going to go outside the lines. If you want to stay in the lines, then you need to kind of hold your brush more perpendicular. leave that like that for just a little bit. And I'm gonna kind of zoom back out a little bit. We're gonna tackle the leaves. I've got 3 leaves here. I did change the drawing just a little bit when it comes to the leaves from the way I finished the last video. I didn't really like the way the leaves were, so just kind of switched it up. So I'm gonna switch to my 10-inch round, and I'm going to get the leaf wet first. I really like the wet on wet technique when I'm doing kind of foliage. I love how it just diffuses naturally. So get that wet. I'm gonna kind of rinse or blot my brush off. I'm gonna go in here. Again, moving the paint in one direction. And actually, these have kind of little spindle, spiny leaves, so I'm actually going to go ahead and technically we could do those in kind of a like sepia color, but just to keep it simple, I'm just going to kind of go in with that same green that we just used. Just kind of pops them in. And then while that's still wet, I'm going to go in with this true green. It's a little bit of a darker shade. And I'm just kind of touching the tip of my brush. And I love how it just will diffuse naturally. I'm not really disturbing the paint that I already put down. That's drying, we're just going to go in and kind of pop in the centers, just kind of alternating between those, mostly we'll do some of the pink, but kind of the periwinkle and the lilac. Fairly creamy consistency. going to go in and put a little bit of veining in those leaves. I want to make sure they're dry first. Okay, so this time I'm going to switch to my liner. Rigger, liner, same idea. At least as far as I know. So they have a long, kind of long veins. I'm gonna go in with that. Kind of a mixture actually of the yellow and the true. Kind of sketchy, it doesn't have to be really a solid line. Okay. Then you could decide if you wanted to kind of go in and even with the rigger brush or a pen, like a liner brush, or sorry, a liner. There's Posca pens or just fine liners. You could go in and just kind of go over the pencils if you wanted to make it more of like an illustrative look, or you could go back in with just the paint color or the darker paint color, however you wanted to do it. Just you could kind of outline things if you wanted to a little bit to give it a little bit more definition. We're not going to do all of that here because that will take forever. You could also go back in and add some more shading just to make things kind of stand out a little bit. Could deepen in those behind petals. And then I thought maybe for this one we could just do a little bit of splatter, maybe just kind of around, kind of not necessarily in the flower, but kind of around the outer portion. So you can kind of just kind of cover up the flower if you want to. And the bigger the brush, the bigger the splatter. So if you want baby splatter, then just use a smaller brush. You want your paint to be a little bit thinner so that you can really get it to splatter. You can also just kind of cover it up with your hand. Get a little bit of that pink in there too. There we go. I think that looks pretty. Like I said, there's always room to kind of go in and put a little bit more detail, more shading. But this video's already gotten a lot longer than I planned. So this is more of a detailed flower, but I just thought it was so pretty. I thought we could, you know, tackle it. So I'm glad that we gave it a try, so it doesn't seem so scary. So I wanted to show that I did go back in and put in some line work. I went ahead and I used a pencil instead of a fine liner so that it wasn't so dark and drastic, but I thought it would make it look really nice just to have a little bit of definition in the petals. And then I did a little bit also, a little sketchiness within the leaves and the stem as well. All right. Thank you so much for painting with me. I'd love for you to leave in the comments to let me know if you're gonna paint it or if you have painted it, what colors you used, if you'd be interested in me creating a Facebook group so that you could show me what you're working on. We could kind of touch base in there. I'd love your feedback, and I, as always, really appreciate you coming and checking out my videos, and I will see you in the next one for our next flower. Thank you again so much, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day or night. Okay, bye.